It's the same old story that it's always been. The farmers and ranchers keep slashing and burning their way into the forest. When they encounter the local tribes, they drag them off, sometimes by force. There are supposed to be laws in place to protect them, but the local governments are less than eager to enforce them. If you could put a word in with your superiors...
I'll pass your concerns on to them. The man known as Joseph Knight said. But I can't guarantee that they'll take action. I'm only here to assess the historical significance of the find.
Of course, that's what UNESCO needs to be concerned with. Protecting the ruins. Those have world significance, don't they?
The United Nations is, of course, concerned with the human rights of the indigenous inhabitants. But that doesn't fall under my jurisdiction. I can promise, however, that your concerns will be passed on to the relevant authorities.
That's all I ask. The Yashiwa are a fascinating tribe. And it would be a crime if their culture and heritage were destroyed so that Americans can get fat on hamburgers.
I prefer tacos. If you'd excuse me, ma'am. He nodded respectfully to the doctor and walked out of his trailer into the stifling heat of the Amazon rainforest. His thin shirt glued to his body, and the chirping sounds of insects and brightly colored birds surrounded him like a kaleidoscope of sound. The camp was a small one, several tents, a latrine, and a trainer with computers, satellite uplink, and a gasoline-powered generator augmented by solar panels. The structures were arranged in a loose semicircle at the base of a massive temple, hundreds of meters tall, made of hand-cut stone, covered in crumbling reliefs and tangled masses of vines. 13 archaeologists and anthropologists had come to this place to study the so-called Yashiwa Pyramid, already being hailed as one of the biggest archaeological finds of the century. Mr. Knight and a few other members of the team were here for a different reason. He saw James Zhao wave to him and nodded to the young Chinese-American man before jogging over next to his colleague. "Can you confirm?" he asked.
Not yet. I'm still trying to figure out what's going on here.
Damn. Have you managed to slow down the progress?
I've convinced the teams that we need to catalog and study the exterior in depth before we even think about entering the structure. But it's only a matter of time before one of them slips their leash and tries to open up one of those doors. I can't exactly tell them not to open King Tut's tomb, can I?
Do your best. Seriously, try hard. The council was adamant at this point. Whatever's inside here, it caused half of their oracles to have a foaming fit when the discovery was announced. We cannot let this place get open until we figure out what's inside. If someone does, and something bad happens, well, the last thing I want to do is to have to blame the Yashiwa for the massacre of a bunch of students. The murderous marauding savages thing doesn't really go over well these days. Besides, they seem like nice people.
Speak of the devil.
On the other side of the camp, a slight, rangy man with leathery, caramel-colored skin was walking towards them. He carried an ornately decorated blood gun, spear walking stick in one hand, and his shirtless body was covered in ornate, interlocking tattoos. Out of respect for the newcomers, the man had traded in his traditional garments of woven plant fibers for a pair of brightly colored shirts. He had also traded in his traditional hand-woven sandals for a pair of leather Birkenstocks. That had less to do with respect, and more to do with comfort. Yashiwa shoes were notoriously uncomfortable. "Mr. Tashika, it's good to see you again."
"And you, Mr. Knight,"
the man said. His English was tinged with a low, guttural accent. The Yashiwa language was largely global.
"Your studies go well?"
"They do indeed. We've been studying the bas relief of the walls of the pyramid. They're fascinating. Do you know anything about them?" Tashika laughed out loud and shook his head.
"I wish I could tell you that this was an ancient holy site to my people, and maybe even quote you some ancient story, passed down from mother to daughter, for countless generations. But the truth is, I don't know. The Yashiwa never came here often. There is no river here, the soil is bad, and the hunting poor."
Which is the interesting thing to me. People don't often build huge buildings out in the middle of nowhere. Buildings this big usually get built where there's some kind of natural resource to draw upon. A river for trade or fishing, fertile ground for farming, high ground for defense and isolation. Not to mention that you don't often find temples without ancillary buildings around them.
Ancillary?
Secondary. Things like homes for priests, or farms to feed them, or to house craftsmen and merchants. Those almost always pop up around religious centers like temples. It's not often that you see a single building like this out in the middle of the jungle.
Then maybe this isn't a temple.
Knight paused for a moment, carefully choosing his next words before going on. There's really nothing else it can be, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. The Sheikah was treading dangerously close to the truth here. A building this big? What can it be?
I do not know. But...
He laughed nervously and rubbed the back of his head.
This is going to make me sound like some ignorant tribal.
You're anything but ignorant, Tashika. Just go on and tell me.
Alright. Look, our village has this old woman. Crazy old crone. We call her the grandmother. They say that she can see the future. It's all ancient legends and myths, but it's part of our culture. You understand?
Yes. Shamans and wise women are universal. He vaguely remembered meeting the old woman when he and the UNESCO team had made their introductions to the local Yashiwa tribes. He remembered a withered old woman with one arm, leaning heavily on a stick, glaring angrily at the interlopers into her village. He also remembered Sao telling him that the woman's Eve signature was showing distinct tendencies towards extrasensorial perceptive abilities.
It's all bullshit. But, well, the Great Mother's insisting that we move to our winter grounds early this year. That's a 30-mile journey through the jungle. We usually don't make that journey until a few months later in the year, but she's insisting that disaster's going to befall us if we remain here. And she's got my father so riled up that he's agreed to move the tribe early this year.
The Sheikah laughed nervously, hiding his teeth with one hand.
It's all realist bull, but the other fours are all taking it seriously, so it looks like I won't be able to help you guys out anymore.
That's a shame, Knight said, and meant it. The Sheikah had been a treasure, a Yashiwa man, raised in the culture of the tribes, but raised in the city, and college educated to boot. He had been invaluable in smoothing out negotiations between the UNESCO team and the Yashiwa. At night, was certain that he was going to miss the young man. Maybe when you come back to your summer grounds, you and I can meet up again.
If you are still here, it may be that you find out all you need to know about this place before then, and you will go home.
Perhaps.
I'll go let the others know. Thank you for your help, and for your respect, Mr. Knight. Good day, Mr. Sao. Tashika!
Sao said, extending his hand in friendship.
Good luck. I'm going to miss you. And I you, Mr. Sao.
The young man inclined his head respectfully to Knight, then walked away to say his goodbyes to his friends and the rest of the UNESCO research team. Knight shook his head, brown furrowed in worry. Jimmy, why does an old proverb about rats and sinking ships comes to mind?
I was thinking the exact same thing. Mr. Knight?
Knight awoke slowly to find Sao leaning over his cot. The young man's face was drawn with worry.
Mr. Knight? I think it's happened.
What's going on? Knight asked, suddenly alert.
Timothy and Jonas are missing, and once the temple door is open.
Damn. I thought I had at least another week before one of those kids tries something stupid.
I don't think it's their fault. You'd better come see.
Knight understood the moment that he came out of his den. It wasn't hard to miss. They knocked over 10 on the edge of the camp. Guidelines snapped. Steel poles bent in two. One of the nylon walls had been shredded, as if by some massive claw. There was a dark blotch on the ground that looked a lot like blood. Who else knows?
2 of the researchers, Lin and Tamaki. I think that's it.
Alright. You talk to them, get them to keep quiet, tell them it's a bear or something, and we're going after them. I'll get the gear. Knight strode quickly across the camp to the equipment tent, where he unlocked a box of gear that he had kept sealed since arriving in South America. Inside, there were 2 headsets, a pair of M4 carbines, ammunition, and a satellite phone. He took out the rifles first, checked to make sure that the chambers were empty, and put them aside. Knight then picked up the satellite phone and dialed a number that didn't exist in any phone directory on Earth.
Central? Report.
Central, this is Tasker 1. Authentication code, Victor, as a guy, 922.
Tasker 1, Central confirms. Bringing up your case file now. Transferring you to your appropriate controller. With one, please.
Knight picked up one of the 2 headsets, checking the Oculus Rig's batteries and doing a quick diagnosis, while Journey's Wheel in the Sky played over the phone. The phone picked up before the song had a chance to repeat once. Tasker 1, this is Central Authority. Report, over. Central, Tasker 1. I've got 2 missing civilians, and the temple doors have opened. I'm about to enter the structure with Tasker 2. 3rd mission priority. I'm escalating to response level 3. If you don't hear back from us within 3 hours, consider it a response level 4 emergency. Please confirm. Over. Tasker 1, Central confirms 2 missing civilians. Temple doors open. Central confirms your escalation to response level 3. Central will escalate to response level 4 at 0600 hours, local time. Over. Thank you, Central. Tasker 1, out. Knight hung up the satellite phone and hugged the unit from his belt buckle. He picked up an empty day bag and packed in food, water, medical supplies, and a laptop computer. Sao joined him in the tent shortly after, and Knight helped him to pack a day bag of his own. The 2 men emerged from the tent, carrying their assault rifles and wearing their night vision goggles. He could see 2 of the researchers from the UNESCO archaeology team standing by the tents. Lin raised her eyebrow in alarm at seeing the 2 men dressed like special operations soldiers. Alright, we've got 2 missing personnel, possibly kidnapped. Sao and I are going to see if we can get them back. Lin, if you don't hear back from us by 6 o'clock, take everyone, pack them into vehicles, and drive towards town. Find the nearest American embassy and tell them what happened.
What did happen?
A helpless Lin exclaimed.
I don't get this at all.
Terrorists. I think they kidnapped Tim and Jonas. I'm going to see if we can find them.
But... Lin, if we don't come back, the terrorists could come after the rest of you. You need to make sure the team gets to safety. You are in charge here.
Lin hesitated to say more. Then, finally, just nodded.
Be safe. Terrorists, huh?
Sao whispered as the 2 men started jogging towards the temple. They got short explanation for our weird-ass activity. True Veritas, the interior of the abandoned temple seemed to glow with a sickly greenish light, the patterns vaguely resembling those of blood splatters or nails being dragged across stone. Greenish mist seemed to swirl around the 2 men, raising goosebumps on their bare arms. The image of our flayed skull raised towards Knight, lipless mouth open in a wordless scream, then vanished into the darkness.
Bad things happen in here.
Very bad. Knight agreed. It took a lot of emotional and spiritual violence for Eve's signals to linger as deeply as these did. There had been murder done in this place, and worse.
Knight?
Sao said softly. He gestured to a spot on the ground that had a brighter Veritas signature than the others. Knight dropped to one knee and ran his hand over the pool of brightly shining white light. His fingertips came away sticky. He put his fingertips to his nose and smelled blood. It's fresh. Couldn't have been shed more than a few minutes ago. I think we're catching up to them. It was then that Knight heard the moaning. It was very soft and very low, no louder than a kitten's cry, but it was low and guttural, and tinged with a nasty wet sound. It was coming from deeper into the temple, further into the darkness.
You know, it's at this point in all horror movies that I always started yelling at the girl not to go into the scary temple. Just go home. Who cares what's in there?
Yeah, but he raised the rifle to his shoulder and continued to walk down the dark, mildewy hallways, closer to the sound. The light was dim. It was the color of fireflies, thousands of them. It flickered and glowed dimly, up ahead in the dark. Knight stepped into the center chamber, and he felt his gores rise. The thing in the center was a mass of matter, about knee-high. It was spongy, laced with tiny holes, about the width of a pencil. Thousands of small, glowing nuggets withered and burrowed their way through the mass, their tiny bodies itching forward, bit by bit, slowly but surely. The thing on the top of the mass wasn't Jonas, not anymore. Its eyes were frozen open in terror, its mouth wide open in shock. One of the maggots was eating its way out of his lower lip, as three more burrowed their way into his left eye. His hand was outstretched towards Knight. The skin was slowly dripping off of it, like a melting candle. Knight reached out with his weapon and gently poked at Jonah's hand. It indented slightly under the touch, leaving behind an impression of his rifle's muzzle, like wax.
Soap. They're turning into soap.
God damn, Knight whispered. He studied the mass a little closer. There, huddled up next to Jonas, his arm and torso melting into the other man's, was Timothy. Alright. We're out of here. Seal the door. Get the UNESCO team out of here. Call in strike. This is way above our...
Sir?
A soft, female voice said behind him.
Mr. Knight?
Knight spun around, rifle raised, to find Lynn standing behind him.
Mr. Knight, I left Tamaki in charge. He's getting everyone ready to move, but I thought you could use some help. Oh my!
Saul grabbed the young Chinese woman before she could scream, slapped his gloved hand over her mouth, and held her down when she struggled. Something moved inside the glowing chamber, and Knight spun around to see. Maggots. Glowing ones. Thousands of them. Bursting from the mass of soapy, waxy material that had once been Jonas and Tim. They crawled over the damned stone, across the ancient bas-reliefs, and over the molten slime, and they were racing towards him in a glowing tide, terrifyingly fast. And Knight turned to Lin and Sao and screamed for them to run, even as his feet turned towards the exit, and he bolted for his life. He heard Sao scream as the things caught up to him and Lin. Heard Lin start to shriek a moment later. Then he felt his ankles give away, and he collapsed to the floor, banging his chin hard against the stone floor, seeing stars. Knight spun around, rifle raised. The glowing green tide was wrapped around his ankles, dragging him towards the mass of soap and wax and horror in the center of the chamber. Lin and Sao were already in it, already starting to melt, already starting to have those horrid green maggots crawl in and out of what had once been flesh and was now closer to soft cheese. His left arm was already crawling with maggots. He had to drop his rifle to pull off his day pack and unzip it. He grabbed the laptop computer and held it to his chest tightly. His eyes were gone, already eaten by those crawling worms. He had to find the power switch by feel, hold it down for 5 seconds with the computer screen closed. He was already dead when the bomb exploded.
Holy
Fox said softly.
Holy
What had once been an ornate stone temple was now a crater in the ground. 3 hours had passed since Central had awoken, struck the broken dagger, and apportated them to the South American jungle. Now, as the 12 members of the Stark team advanced toward what should have been an ancient archaeological site, All they could see was a wide crater, filled with glassy rubble, in the middle of the rainforest.
Even seen something like this before, Jackal?
She asked her XO, as the rest of the team split off to search for survivors. Once, Jackal admitted, in Cornwall.
Cornwall.
Arslight said over the comms. I think I found something.
On my way.
Fox said. She got back to her feet and jogged over to where the other soldier was looking down at something in the tall grass. It was a pair of Oculus headsets, glowing softly. Their visual components and visors melt and burned, but the recorders intact. The two items were laying on a patch of grass in which a complex geometric form had been burned, reducing the plant life to white ash. Emergency dog. Someone hit the panic button.
Bag it. Our report is in.
Arslight pulled an evidence bag from his side pocket and gingerly picked up the two black boxes, roping them into the mylar container and sealing it with double-sided tape. His Oculus visor would record the location and the time of discovery, but he jotted down a quick note on the outside of the bag, a permanent marker nonetheless. So, what was this? A failed mission? Or a successful one? Fox didn't have an answer for him. She still couldn't decide how to answer that 12 hours later when the helicopter came to take them home.